So are we ready, Joanna?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just call everybody. Okay, so we got Teague, me, yes, here. Vieira. Makiva.
Yes.
Tesla. Drinkwater. Indig. Kaminsky.
Yes, I'm present.
Yep. Canton. Canton, I thought I know you're there. Corey?
Yes.
Okay. Kelterborn?
Yes, I'm here.
Myers? Mitelli?
I'm here.
Rabbi, Niederman? Nieves?
Here.
Sofer? Vega?
Here.
Weiser? Andrews? Berger? Kowachka?
Here.
Naplatowski?
Here, sorry to be late.
I'm sorry?
I said sorry to be late. I saw 6:30 on the notice and
I see you. I see you. You're good.
Yeah.
Platarski and Stone. Okay.
This is Adam Myers. I was late also, sorry.
Quorum +1.
Okay. Excellent. So Myers here. So what do we have? 13, right? Oh, 12.
I've got counted 12.
I counted 12 too.
Okie doke. Thank you, guys. All right. We have one item on the agenda. And then, as most of you probably know, the chair did ask me to bring up in new business the concept of after hours variances. I don't really feel comfortable asking anybody to bring that to a vote, but we can talk about it, mainly because it's not on the agenda. And I think it probably could wait until our next meeting, which, by the way, has to be November 30th, because if we had it on the first Monday in December, it would be like a day before the community board. It wouldn't give us enough time to get a report and do what we have to do. So why don't we get started with our agenda item, which is 144 Greenpoint Avenue. I'm going to hand this over to Trina.
Okay, and I'm going to follow up on what Sante just said. So there are two things that maybe you guys can give more. Are there committee members that did not see the long presentation last week or at the board meeting last month? So
As I did not.
I'm just wondering for the record, since we're voting on the, the full project, we should, for the record, the whole thing should be presented.
Okay, so please then present the whole thing, and please include the additional material that was put in the Dropbox, and also explain the situation with LPC in terms of how they, in their agenda for the 15th of November, how they have it listed as the whole building being demolished. So with that, you guys can take it away.
Okay, I'll get things started. My name is Frank Cheney. I'm the zoning and land use attorney on the project, and joined here tonight by Jeremy and Philip Katz representing ownership, and Ray Dovell and Leonard Lung from Platt Beyer, Dovell and White, the architects. From the zoning perspective, as you probably know, this is located in a C43A zoning district with a 3.0 allowable AR. It's an R6A equivalent. The building is going to be and let me just clarify this right off the bat. It's not a demolition and new construction. It is a an enlargement and alteration. The only demolition that will be conducted will be interior, certain partition walls, stairwells will be demolished, but the building is remaining and rehabilitated and enlarged. As to why Landmarks wrote it up the way they wrote it, I couldn't tell you. Like Trina, I've not been able to get our project planner from Landmarks on email or phone, busy all day. But they are aware of the fact that it's an error. We notified them of that, and hopefully they'll correct that before the Landmarks hearing on the 15th. So this will be a commercial zoning district.
Frank, I think you were breaking up. We didn't hear your what you just were saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. It will be a commercial building in a commercial zoning district. We'll have use group 6A, local retail uses and office uses. In every respect, it will comply with zoning. In fact, in terms of the street wall height, building height, FAR, and floor area, it will be less than what the maximums are allowed under the.
Bless you.
Thank you.
I think what I'd like to do is turn it over to the ownership team to introduce themselves and say a little something about themselves and what their vision is for this building. And following that, the architect team will make the presentation. So Jeremy or Philip, whichever, I'll turn it over to you.
I'll go ahead. Thank you, Frank. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Katz. I'm a partner at MacArthur Holdings, owners of 144 Greenpoint Avenue. I'd like to start by saying my apologies that I missed our presentation to the full board a few weeks ago. My wife and I actually welcomed a baby girl about an hour before that board meeting. I was listening in from the postpartum floor of Mount Sinai Hospital, but admittedly, it was a little challenging for me to take myself off of mute in that environment. So apologies, but here we are. A little bit about us. We're a family-run real estate business based here in New York City. I'm a part of the fourth generation of our company. Our organization has years of experience building, owning, and operating property. We've completed ground-up projects as well as renovations of existing buildings throughout the boroughs. In Brooklyn specifically, we recently completed a renovation and restoration of the Brooklyn headquarters for the ASPCA, which for those of you who may not know is the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, which is located at the top of the Gowanus Canal. 144 Greenpoint Avenue presents an exciting opportunity for us because to us, it's a chance to breathe new life into a building. This property is located in the heart of this neighborhood, and it has sat vacant and out of service for far too long. We'd like to solidify its future as a valuable addition to this community. We believe retail and office space, as we are aiming to create with our proposed development program, is a need in this location, particularly to keep pace with the growth of new residential units to this district. Our objective with this project is to construct a property that can provide quality spaces commensurate with the evolving needs of Brooklyn businesses of today and of the future. And with that, I will pass this over to PBDW. So Ray Leonard, give you the floor.
So Leonard will share the screen if that's all right, and we'll tuck into this. Can you make that full screen, Leonard?
Hello?
Can anyone help assist with the full screen, or else maybe we should just go ahead with it?
We could just go ahead with it. Leonard?
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but you're not full screen yet.
Okay, how big is?
It's about half, it's filling about half the screen, at least from my end. If you can't, we'll just proceed with it at that scale, if everyone can see it.
Leonard, the maximize tab is not working. Where that little X is in the top right, if you hit
How about that?
Nope,
one smaller.
How about that?
that's just what we saw before.
And there's no view full screen, Leonard.
Here's the presentation.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, perfect.
Is that better?
That's fine. Let's stick with that.
Yeah.
Okay, here is the existing building in its existing condition. It's hard to explain the architecture of this other than, I would call it casino revival type architecture, over a stripped off existing building. It's in disrepair, both at the ground level facade area. It's full of graffiti and broken windows, etc. One thing to note about this building is it has been heavily modified over time, both in terms of the facade and the structure within, to accommodate its I would say its cabaret type use over the years. Structure's been removed, long spans have been put in with rooftop trusses. The floors have been cut up. And it's generally the interior demolition has taken place, and it's revealed all of these conditions. This, as Frank has pointed out, this is an alteration and addition. We are keeping the existing structure, though it's a wood structure. We're keeping the wood structure. We're keeping as much of the existing building as possible, including its exterior bearing walls and on the side and the rear walls will be the same walls in the same position. Okay, next. Okay, here is the building, both in the zoning map, which is to the left. You can see we're just mapped in to the commercial zone, and that was deliberately done to include this building as a contributing part of a commercial building. It's located close to the corner of Manhattan and Greenpoint Avenue. It's within 100 feet, with the exception of the westernmost portion. To the right, you can see in red where the building is in context of the commercial avenues. This district is composed of two main commercial arteries and then residential arteries with an architecture that is remarkably consistent and remarkably well preserved. You can go on to the next slide. Here is the existing building showing in red. The little dot of the red is showing where it is in the district, just mapped in, and we believe that was deliberately done so that this building would be included in the district for future renovation. To the right, you see some historic tax lot pictures from the 80s showing its condition. And here's some interesting pictures showing the building at the upper left in its earliest iteration, which is a fairly standard two-story building with some cast iron elements in the front and a cornice. Over time, this building was stripped of its architectural ornamentation. The last existing photograph shows some of the existing facade elements there, but with new windows within. The one-story portion was really never a very distinguished building. There was a cornice there. It was stripped off. It's really just a brick. It's really just a brick fascia across the top with an aluminum and glass infill. It's not a distinguished piece of this composition at all. It is one tax lot. It is one building as it is currently filed, and that's been its use for some time. And here's some pictures over time showing how this building has been modified. It was started out as a fairly flat facade with windows, and then these rather odd piers with marble and granite tile came in, and stucco, and it's changed, but not in any way that we think improved its overall appearance. And here the individual components showing the current condition in very, very poor condition, with the one very strange thing that we hope to correct are these bays that project out, which are completely foreign to the district, the lower right-hand side. Those are, bay windows that we think even extend over the lot line. Keep going. And this is an interesting analysis of the commercial arteries against the residential streets. So the commercial arteries being Greenpoint and Manhattan. When we've color coded this, the turquoise represents buildings that have retail components on the ground floor and residential above. The yellow buildings are 100% commercial buildings. And then our building then is in pink, and you can see there are a number of fully commercial buildings in the district, which is, with an increasing residential population, it's a needed component to the success of the vitality of the district. And here are the streetscape elements that you see. It is the down Greenpoint and down Manhattan, there are blocks of very handsome 3, 4, and 5-story buildings. There's some 5-story brick buildings which are quite tall, with commercial below them. So it's a nice consistent block of residential uses above commercial uses, which is it's wonderful. It brings life to the street. And it's really a lovely area that's been improving significantly over time. You can see our building at the upper left-hand corner of the top row. That's where we are. The composition of the street is not simply a straight cornice line. It dips with one-story taxpayers. It comes up with some commercial buildings, and then with the residential buildings forming more or less monolithic blocks with lots of variety of architectural style. So it's eclectic to some degree and consistent in other degrees, but it's a wonderful district. Next. And here's where we are in the district. The red line represents the district line, and you can see where we are. We are, a portion of the building, as Frank has pointed out, is within 100 feet of the corner, which represents that slight diagonal line which parallels Manhattan Avenue. And that we're permitted to build full to the rear lot line of the building, which we haven't done. The building currently steps back about 5 feet from the rear lot line. the zoning requirements require that it's a commercial building, but because we back onto residential uses, we're required to have a residential rear yard, which is 30 feet rather than the normal 20 feet. So that's respected throughout. So as Frank has pointed out, this is fully compliant with zoning. Keep going. And here is these are really interesting pictures that we just found. To the left is to the right is the existing building at the corner of Manhattan and Greenpoint. It's a handsome building, but look at what the building looked like originally. It's a remarkable structure. And this to us pointed out the real, I would say, the aspirations of this district. This is a fancy formal piece of architecture that anchors an important corner of the district. It's a 3-story commercial bank building, and it just extremely handsome with its penimented cornice. And it's just a shame that it's been stripped off due to, local administrative requirements. But that shows you, that to us really expresses the aspirations of the district, and these aspirations still exist here, and this is a worthy building, and we hope to show you that what we're providing is a worthy addition to this district, which continues to express the aspirations. Next. And this building is this is a fantastic terracotta and brick building at the corner of Greenpoint and Franklin, and it's been unadulterated through the years. Its cornice remains intact, its terracotta remains intact. Just an extremely delicious bit of architecture. Commercial originally, and the building has been converted to residential use. But it does show you that the people who, at the time these buildings were being built, this is a serious piece of architecture, and it's, that's what we're trying to look at these models to inform us about what we should be doing in this district. Next. And this is the other fully commercial larger building at the corner as well. And this is we don't know what this building looked like originally, but it is an eclectic building that was clad fairly recently. Some of the existing components are there. It's quirky, it's wonderful, and to us it's a wonderful addition to the district. Again, it's 2 and 3 story structure. So we looked at these, and these were what informed us, and what also informed us, because we were not at the corner, was the module of the block, which is basically a 25-foot module. Go on, Leonard. But these are the other commercial buildings on the district. They vary from a very handsome deco-inspired, basically 3-story building, because there's a mezzanine in the bank building, to the very handsome bank building that abuts us, which is limestone. And then the rest of them are, I would say, nondescript taxpayers that exist there, that have a use, but they're underbuilt, and they're ripe for some expansion, which would help bring some continuity to the street. So those are some buildings that later could be looked at. This is a building that was recently approved at Landmarks, converted from a commercial building to a residential building. And what was interesting here is that they modified the brick to make it more interesting and give it a little more depth. But it also looked at the module, this 20-foot module. It's not expressed very strongly, but it's there nonetheless. And Leonard, you could point that out on the photograph on the right, that there is this 20-foot module, which is pretty standard in the district. So then we go on. Now we're going to look at the floor plans very quickly. I won't spend much time on them, but to the left are existing, to the right are proposed. This is the cellar. The cellar was used extensively in the ballroom days. There were dance rooms and private party rooms down below. That's all going to be gutted out, or has been gutted out. And we're going to have a commercial, a fully code compliant core to the west, which includes a stair and an elevator and toilet rooms as a part of the base building, and then the possibility of 2 commercial zones below, one small and one fairly large, with incoming utilities across the front. A lot of this exists in vault space. We're unchanging it. We're not extending the vault space. We're reestablishing some hatches there, and and improving the sidewalk experience, and that's all we're doing. Next slide. And here again is left is existing conditions, which was basically split into 2 interconnected zones for the cabaret or nightclub. And what we are doing is we have a very compact core to the west, which includes stairs going up and out the front door and a stair coming up from the cellar and going out the same opening. So we have limited I would say the core components coming in. Then we have a very small lobby which comes in and with an elevator and a doorman and a small toilet room, and then the balance of it would be divided into 1, 2, or 3 retail components. That at one point there was a grocery store operator who wanted the whole thing. That has fallen apart, and so this is all up on the market now for 1, 2, or 3 retail uses there. The back of the building is largely unchanged. We have an egress easement which goes out the back. The easement has been in existence for I don't know, 90 years, Frank, I think. And that easement goes through, and we are maintaining that. The easement runs with the property, but that is an egress easement. That is not an access easement. So it's only being used for emergency uses. And the benefit of that is it gets another blank wall stair going out the front of the building. So we're able to express more of the architecture and less of the service components. Again, that block that goes roughly to the lot line is existing construction, and the terrace is also well. This is the second floor. The second floor existing is basically divided into 2 parts. One is a 2-story portion. One is a 1-story portion. We are going to build out a second floor adjacent to the existing one with a 30-foot rear yard, and that would be a terrace for passive use for the occupancy of the space. It is not a separate occupancy. It is a simultaneous occupancy with the floor, meaning it can't be jam-packed. It can only accommodate the number of persons that are within the retail component. And then to the right, there are standard toilet rooms, and then the egress stair at the back, which drops down and empties into the egress easement that takes you out into the street beyond, underneath the building and out the street beyond. Next. And this is the 3rd floor. Our 3rd floor is an all-new 3rd floor, entirely respecting the zoning. Small terrace in the back, again for passive use. And the existing condition had these enormous 1-story trusses that were put in to get rid of the center line of columns for hanging for a large dance floor. And so that's how they got rid of the middle. They basically hung the structure from these trusses. We're removing those trusses, building the 3rd floor, and introducing the center line of columns, again, where the columns were before. So we're reestablishing the structure in that area. Keep going. And then finally, the top floor to the left is a partial 4th floor. It occupies about a quarter of the floor area. There's a small commercial space served by an elevator and a stair, and then a stair at the back of the building, dumping out into the easement beyond. It's set back. The terrace is set back, and then on the roof are some very small what are called VRF units. They're very low. They will not be visible from any viewpoint. So that's the plan. Now let's go in the section. Here's the section. To the left is the existing section through the cabaret, heavily modified over time. We are keeping the structure at the first and the second floor, and the heights. There's roughly 15 feet at the first floor, and 14. What, Leonard? 14.9 at the second. Excuse me. 14, and then our next floor will be 14 floor to ceiling. So, but the floor to ceiling at the top will be considerably reduced due to ceiling construction due to roof construction above. So the floor to ceiling is diminished. And then at the top, the partial fourth floor, glass enclosed structure partially visible from a couple of viewpoints. And then an elevator serving the entire building. This elevator is what's called an ERL. It's a machine room less, an MRL elevator, which keeps the height down. So we were able to compress that to the degree possible. So that's that section. Here is a section looking through Greenpoint, looking down Greenpoint Avenue, with sight lines against the wall of the adjacent building. So directly across, you will see the cornice and a small sliver of the fourth floor. Next. And then here is a partial street elevations, top showing the existing condition, the lower one showing our building, which is newly clad building, composed of brick and steel and glass windows with metal cornice. It is related we believe this building is related very much in spirit to the existing buildings, existing architecture, but it is contemporary in its evolvement. We did not believe that, creating a false, pastiche presentation here would be appropriate. So we'll show you later what that looks like, but it is not out of scale. It's 3 stories adjacent, and many of the adjacent buildings are 3, 4, and 5-story buildings. So it's entirely within scale with both the brick buildings along the avenue and the commercial buildings within the district. Keep going. And then here's what it looks like. Looking east, with the very handsome bank building to the right, our building against it. We felt very strongly that the relationship in coloration should relate to the bank. So we have selected a mottled warm gray brick with some variation in it as the principal material. And that the piers, which are on the 20-foot module, are that same brick, and they return back against the bank building. The long bearing walls beyond will be stucco clad in a warm stucco and be articulated so that they're simply not blank walls with some fire rated glass where we can put it where it's not in the core. The bulkhead will be set back slightly from the lot line, and that will be clad in a light gray standing seam metal roof, which is kind of a typical expression for these buildings' bulkheads. Again, a metal cornice across the top, the intermediate piers being narrower brick piers, and then larger windows in keeping with more of a commercial expression. The base of the building is a steel arched expression which picks up the piers above, but in a way that is very typical of commercial buildings both in the district and elsewhere, with some restrained canopies at the commercial bays, with a larger canopy at the building entrance, with some signage across. Next. And here it is looking at from the other direction. You will see a sliver of the fourth floor, which is not atypical. We have set back the actual parapet at the fourth floor in a way to reduce the height to the cornice level. The cornice level is roughly coplanar with the top of the structure. The parapet wall is then pushed back to keep that off the lot line in a way that gives it the expression. So we were able to reduce the expressed height by about 4 feet by doing that. Again, brick spandrels, brick piers, large brick piers, brick intermediate piers, and then repetitive windows. The upper floors being slightly smaller than the third floor windows being slightly smaller than the second floor windows. Keep going. And then here it is at the street front. Again, not knowing exactly what's going to happen. It will be divided into 3 bays. It could be 1 use, it could be 2, or it could be 3. We have these fairly compressed little canopies that project for little protection from the elements, and for attachment of signage. The steel piers then visually supporting the brick piers above, but then again done in painted metal with a liner against the retail of what's called a GFRC. It's a warm panel that very much, it looks like stone, but it's warm, and it's a different expression on the at the return edges of the pier. Full height glass, large glass doors, and then at the building entrance proper, we have modified that a little bit by making more of the precast element against the building entry. Keep going. Some details showing that building entry with some signage, 144 Greenpoint, a single pair of doors going in with a side light, and then underneath the 144 is the fire door, which will be a concealed element within that. So the hope is not to read that as just simply a flat metal door. To the right, you see the treatment at the cornice and the piers. We believe it's very respectful. It's not overdone. It's kind of modest in its detailing. And we believe will make a very nice presence on the street as a commercial building. Larger windows, all repeating windows with some depth. We didn't want to make the windows simply flat. We wanted to give it depth and richness with some shadows, and brick spandrels against the typical brick spandrels against the piers. A couple of other views of the commercial base, and view of the upper portion of the building showing a sliver of the partial fourth floor. Keep going. And then these were asked for the last time, some additional views by the committee that wanted to see some more detail. And so we've created some additional views. This is a view to the left, it's showing a view to the east, showing the bulkhead, unadulterated view of the bulkhead with its standing seam metal roof, compressed as much as possible. We've compressed the stairs, we've compressed the elevator to the degree possible, but it is needed to serve that partial floor. There's not a bit of excess area up there. And then from another angle to the right, another angle, slightly sharper angle, looking down at the handsome commercial building at the end of the street. Next. Some more straight on views, looking east, looking to the west, excuse me. Again, the further you get to the building, the less you see of the partial fourth floor. Keep going. And then further down the street, you're going to see a little bit more of that fourth floor, partial fourth floor, which is pointed out in the right image. And in the left image, seeing a very small piece of the stair, the exit stair. So there is a few additional bits of visibility. And then here are some details of the storefront, which, you know, we wanted to give some richness to the store, to the street, not overdo it, but some fairly simple detailing, which gives it a little warmth around the edge, but largely glass as what you'd expect in a retail environment. And mid-zone, this just shows you the modulation that we were talking about earlier with at roughly 20 feet, with the interior piers divided into 3 equal bays for the windows. The windows have a little depth to them in a way to try to reintroduce some richness into the facade and some shadows and interest above, but not overdoing it, we don't believe. Keep going. Top of the building. This shows you this is a flat on elevation. You will never see this elevation, but it just shows you how we managed to drop the cornice line by keeping that cornice line roughly at the roof level, with the parapet being pushed back. And you can see that in the small section to the left where the parapet is pushed back. Keep going. And then this is a flat on elevation looking at the partial 4th floor with the mechanical units above. You will never see this directly. This is not visible from the street from any point of view unless you have a drone. Again, some details showing the canopies and the proposed signage. We have talked about some other options for this as a way of reducing the presence of it on the street. But this is what right now we have. And keep going, Leonard. And then finally, the final image is showing what we're proposing versus what's existing from the same vantage point. And we very much hope you're receptive to this. We think it's a very, we believe it's a handsome and respectful intervention. And as Frank has pointed out, we were entitled under zoning to add another entire floor to this, but felt that was not appropriate here. So we let that floor area go. And then with only a very small portion of a partial 4th floor. Then later some questions were asked about various views from different areas. So we have those next. This is an appendix that we've created. And here you see the back of the building. Questions were asked about the back of the building. The back of the building is the existing condition there is pushed back about 5 feet from the lot line. And it is a 1-story component to the west, and then a 2-story component to the east. And what we have added is only the stair bulkhead, which is the stair, that's not a bulkhead. That's the stair that serves the building all the way through. That stair then drops down and egresses out into an easement that takes it out to the through street. And again, that easements run with the property. So that's, as long as this building remains, that entitled to that easement. As long as the site exists, we're entitled to it. These are the side elevations, which again, you will not really see direct this way, but we wanted to add some detail to it so that it wasn't simply a bland stucco end wall. And with some windows where we can have them. Next image is, these views were asked for. Can you see it from the church? No, you cannot see it from the church. Those 2 arrows in the next one from the left show how the egress easement comes up onto the sidewalk. It comes up through 2 passages, which provide plenty of egress for the building, way more than is actually needed. And then the next question is, what does it look like from the alleyway? So right now, this is the existing condition with the alleyway door shut, with the alleyway open, and you see a tiny little sliver of the building there, of the existing building. And then again, next image. To the left is what you see, to the right is what you're going to see through that slot. You will see a tiny sliver of the building. At the church all the way to the left, you will see nothing. There is not a view possible from that. Keep going. And then questions were asked about what happens at the back. What happens at the back is a 30-foot rear yard required by zoning. The two terraces are existing terraces that you see there. No change to the height of those two blocks of space, which are terraces. The addition will only be the stair bulkhead. And then the building itself set 30 feet back from the lot line. It is surrounded by 2, 3, and 4-story buildings. 4-story buildings being the residential building directly to the back. So we are not really, this is not it is not a big change to this back area, especially due to the proximity of the 4-story buildings adjacent to it. Keep going. And again, from slightly different perspective, seeing the same views of the two existing terraces with the stair component against these 4-story residential buildings directly behind it and other buildings beyond. Keep going.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, so that's the presentation. We believe we've answered questions that have been asked of us in the interim. There is really no change except the potential of dropping the signage below and reducing it in scale because we think it may be slightly out of scale. So at this point, I think we're ready for comments and questions from the board.
Okay, well,
Frank, if you think I've missed something, please mention it.
I think you hit all of the points. Thank you, Ray.
well, thank you all for the presentation and thank you for being so willing to answer the various questions that came up both in email and at the presentation to the full board. I have first a comment about building materials, and what your presentation talks about and really points to are the different purpose-built commercial buildings in the district, and just the standout ones. And you mentioned some of the materials in them. You talked about cast iron. Actually, you mentioned that there was cast iron in the original building on that site. You talked about terracotta and limestone, but when you talk about the building, when you explain to us the building materials you're using in this building, it's brick, steel, and glass with a metal cornice. And I'm wondering if you did consider using kind of richer materials that one would think would belong in a historic district, and then came back to the brick, steel, and glass, or I don't know. Is there any possibility of looking at the palette of materials you're using and maybe upgrading them to something more in keeping with the other the buildings that you cited in the historic district?
Well, there's a lot of brick in this building that we believe is a direct response to the district. It's primarily brick. The steel is, cast iron was a material that was used structurally historically. It was not just, and it was used in fairly simple ways. And the steel is in direct reference to that. But we believe that the building should be respectful in spirit to the historic building, but there is a way to do it in a contemporary way that you look at the building and go, gee, this is a modern building that's extremely respectful. But your comment is well taken and understand the issue there. But we do believe that a contemporary building can exist in spirit and relationship to historic buildings, and that we really should speak to our times, and that that if the building, it's a good building, it should relate in spirit to in a character, but not necessarily in a way that's a direct pastiche of something that was there.
No, I'm not asking for pastiche. I'm just wondering, they're contemporary buildings that are used where the materials used are of a better quality, I guess.
Well,
And
we're not using inexpensive materials there by any means. You know, we don't believe in that. We're not doing fiberglass. We're not doing anything that is going to cheapen anything. It's materials that are routinely used for these issues. It's steel, it's painted steel, you know, they're high quality materials. But your point is well made, and thank you.
okay. And then I have another question. Can you review the ceiling heights on all the floor to ceiling heights? And I'm wondering if there's any way, especially given the fact that the buildings on either directly adjacent to them are that much lower, if there's a way to consider lowering the height of your building.
Well, the first floor is at about 15 feet. We don't want to start ripping out the floor. So
Right.
Is that right, Leonard? It's about a 15-foot floor to floor, or 14.
But we think with, you know, mechanical, by the time you're looking at maybe a 10, 12-foot ceiling, something like that.
But the
within
floor to
same
floor, but let's
Floor,
talk about
yes.
is about 15 feet at the first floor. It's not at the same level, by the way, so we have to level it a little
yeah.
bit. It's
Are
a
you
couple of
leveling it
inches
up or
off.
leveling it down?
Well, we're going to bring it up because we want to preserve the structure, but it's only by a couple of inches. It's not a major. So we left that alone. The third story.
Second floor is 14 feet.
The second
floor.
Right, but that's an existing condition because
Exactly.
it is maintaining the ceiling space of the existing building, the ceiling, the floor to ceiling of the existing building. So we just kept that through, again, trying to preserve the existing stuff, which is which is primarily heavy wood construction, which we want to keep, and we're just going to extend that out to the
west.
infilled second floor portion. The new floor is a 14-foot floor to floor, or floor to roof.
Yep.
But what you have to keep in mind is that the New York City codes now require an incredible amount of insulation and either green roofing or terracing, which brings it way down. So the floor to ceiling there after that's finished is about what, Leonard?
Like around 11 and change.
11 and change. So that's how we ended up at those heights, and those heights are also very typical of commercial buildings because the mechanical systems run horizontally, unlike residential buildings where they run vertically. So, you know, it's fairly typical of a commercial building.
And what about the penthouse?
The penthouse, Leonard, is floor to ceiling is about 11 feet or 10 feet.
Yeah, about 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That, yes, it is visible from some portions, but it's a we felt it is not out of character of a retail or office use.
To have a glass penthouse on the top?
Yes, to have a glass penthouse on the top. It's largely out of view. So that was a case where we felt we were able to do something different at the top that's really out of sight of the sight lines generally around, with the exception of way down the Greenpoint Avenue.
Yeah.
So that was our thinking there.
Okay, and the last point that I wanted to make has to do with the canopies and the signage. I think when you presented to the full board, were all the canopies the same size, or did you have
No, it's the exact same.
It's the same thing. I mean, those canopies, I've never seen anything like that in the Greenpoint Historic District or really anywhere in a historic district. Those really stand out. And the signage also being so large. Were you looking at something within the district, or were you just trying to come up with something you felt was appropriate to your building?
Well, Canopies are a nice thing to have, especially over an entrance. It just keeps you out of the rain. And the signage, yes, we're looking at reducing that signage. The staff at Landmarks has already pointed that out. We're looking at that now to reduce the impact of that by dropping it below a canopy and perhaps reducing the depth of the canopies.
And height.
And height, and we would like to keep something over the main building entrance because we want to distinguish that from the retail.
Right, how far does it stick out right now? I was trying to look at the drawing and it looked like it's about 5 feet or something.
8 feet and 9 inches. I remember the biggest one.
That's the commercial entry.
Yeah.
I believe it's 3 feet. These smaller retail canopies.
So it goes from 3 feet, the smaller ones are 3, and then it's 8 feet, 9 inches?
8.6.
Or 8 feet, 6.
For again, the main Greenpoint commercial, with the new core, it takes you upstairs.
Okay. Well, those were the things that stuck out for me.
Thank you.
Thank you
for those. Yeah.
Okay, I see Katie has her hand raised. All right, actually, I'd like to go to Sante first, if that's okay, and then we can work our way around.
Sure, Trina. Also, Rolf had asked me to show some of his image. I don't know if maybe we want to show Rolf image, may unveil other things to the community and to the committee.
I think Rolf has been given time to show his PowerPoint after we speak to these guys.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I don't want to take the space of anybody, but if you want me to speak first, I'm happy to do that, Trina.
Sure.
So, yeah, thank you for the presentation. And I was rewriting notes. You had definitely more information and more pages. Also, I've been personally spending some time. I met Rolf, represent the Milton Street Block Association. And so we've been looking at that. Of course, there are community issues, and we'll look under the request of the chair of the subcommittee. We'll look at that issue even separately, but we try to focus more on what we felt as a community, and he will speak representing the Block Association. I also live in that portion of the community, so somehow I'll play a double role, either as a committee member, but also as a resident of that portion of the community. One main things I feel a little bit, and I'm a contemporary, I look at contemporary architecture. I'm not a purist in the sense, of course, it's very difficult because we enter into the subjectiveness of what is beauty or what is more compatible when we enter with material. But I'm also a contextualist, and so the analysis and the things I will tell you is because I want to try to look in context. And the first things has come very clear. It's about the scale of the building, and I'm not saying that the building is incredibly tall. There is a tower. It is not, and the building. There are other buildings in the historic district of which they have that height. But what I feel that the building is still there despite those props, let's say, that have been applied on top of the building and the loss of historic fabric. But there is an outline and there is a mass that still exists there despite the design of the Polonaise, and existed before in picture from the 20s and in picture from the 40s, either of the tax block photo 40s and 80s. And and I believe one things I didn't see, and I was taking note of in your presentation, like in the slide number 3, in page number 3, you show the historic designation with the photo of the 80s. But it would have been also helpful probably to show the picture of the photo of the 40s, also because it showed that with one very important, I believe, element comparison of scale of a building next to the Polonaise, which is the bank building, which is pretty well maintained. It's a beautiful building, it's on a small scale. And the original building, as for designation, it was composed of two buildings, one lower, and my historic photo actually indicated there was a cornice. It wasn't an exceptional, beautiful building, but it was an historic building. And I believe the scale somehow complement the bank, didn't overwhelm the bank building. And what we're doing now, we have this building which is like expanded and it's kind of dwarfing the bank. I didn't see in your presentation, and a member of the community felt a little bit, oh, is this a little bit of meeting and information is a little bit misleading, but I didn't see, and I was trying to take note to verify. And so in number 3, we don't see. Page number 4, we see the tax photo 1940s, of which I will show you after, because I have 4 images I want to show the committee. It's kind of meeting the bank building. The original 1940 tax block photo actually contain the bank building is there, but it's being cropped out and is not showing, I believe, that important element is the bank. Then in page number 5, still, the bank is not showing, is always kind of cut out somehow from everywhere. And another element about it, and Rolf probably presentation will show other things, you understand better, is the general streetscape. Why this building is was lower and continue to be lower next to a lower bank. We have all these church bell. We have a lot of church in Greenpoint. The St. Anthony is kind of cardinal point in Greenpoint. You can see from all around. And also the St. John's Lutheran Church behind, which is a beautiful, I don't know if you had a chance to walk through the church. There is stained glass. And there is this church bell, which actually as decoration 360 degree. It was meant to be visible 360 degree. There wasn't a rear front of that bell, tower bell, and right now it is visible. It will not be visible when the building next to the bank that currently has the same height, actually a little bit lower than the bank, will take shape as an enlarged presence. That tower bell will be covered. And then I was looking again, I'm going through this because I don't know, my committee member have curiosity of that. Slide under A. Yeah, we see the bank there because there is kind of a collage of all the building. I know, you were trying to give us indication there were other buildings down the block or the corner that were of similar scale. And that's the only slides page where we see the building, but it's very small because it's a collage of many buildings. And the bank, you can see the bank next, and but it's not very easy, especially showing through the small scale of our monitor through the WebEx. And then other note, yeah, the things then, the expanded building, I was looking at slide number 30, there is that visible top floor, and the sideline, they were taking only frontal, but we have this, and I believe Trina asked for that slice, we have definitely, coming up from Greenpoint Avenue, from the water, you'll see that, it's definitely, I don't know, I feel the Polonaise, it was not a beautiful building. It was the manifestation of the 1970. I believe it had some innocence in reality. It was, it was a practical building built by immigrant, to have a place, where, certain functions were celebrated. It was a community building really somehow. And, and so I believe we pointing at this building full of graffiti. I see all this presentation. It wasn't before full of graffiti. It's been since, I don't know if you were the owner all the time or somebody else had purchased the building, and it looks so derelict now because nobody has been taking care. But I feel still that the scale and the massing is kind of an unusual Manhattanization, I don't know if that's a word we could say, of Greenpoint. And and this canopy very large, 8 feet, it's a building, but it's somehow in a more beautiful way and in a good design with all the feature of design that building can have, is still an anomaly somehow, I feel. We're trying to find, Collier building, you were pointing the Collier building, which I know very well. We've been attending, public hearing and landmark. The building hasn't been enlarged in scale. Yes, it's been redundant, but if we look at the cupola, at the dome of the bank, actually, the building that was redone has been kept at the same height. It hasn't been enlarged in terms of height. I believe that cupola, the dome of the bank, was a point of reference, for heights. Also, another development, which there was no building at all on Collier, it was being consistently reduced. But this is at the core of our historic district. And of course, I was asked not to enter into the community issue, but there is all these uses and these terraces. And but I attended many public hearings at the Landmark Commission. And and I know we have a variety of commissioners there. They have a different function in their daily life and professionally. But also I know many architects, which I respect them. Some are, contextualists, and they have expressed many times, how they felt, despite that there is a rear in a front, and the rear maybe should be disregarded. Our rear was quite invasive, or and I believe those important comments. Because yes, it is as of zoning, but it is as of zoning when it is outside of an historic district, and that's why the reason why I believe you and many other professional come.
Sante, can I stop you and just ask, do you have questions for these guys?
Sure.
Do you have specific questions for the architect or for the presenter?
No, but I want to point on this stuff because they were important, I believe, for the committee. And
I think Rolf is going to be given time to do his presentation. I think we're going to be seeing images that will point to a lot of things you're saying, but I'm just wondering, well, for the presenters, do you have any questions?
No, those were confirmation of things that I noticed. I want to show you only 4 pictures for the committee to show the importance of the contest of the building.
Are these pictures in Rolf's PowerPoint, or are they different?
No, they're not. They're mine.
Okay, why don't the other committee members ask their questions? Do you want to show the pictures while the presenters are here? Is that what you're trying?
Yes, I love to do that.
Okay, let's do it quick. You can do.
I would like.
And then maybe.
Sense of what.
I'm sorry, Del, were you talking?
Yes, I would like to see the pictures.
Okay.
Sorry, I share professionally with Zoom. Normally I watch presentation. I never share. Let me see if I can share.
Well, Sante is trying to do that. Katie, do you want to speak?
Yeah, and then after I see presentations by Sante and Ralph, I'll come back to it. I just want to say, just as a note, that I think it's important that we know whether people are speaking specifically for representing a block association or not. Because that was mentioned, I think it's very important to know that specifically.
I said Rolf was going to present, Katie. I said I'm a committee member. I've been involved with the community. I live here, but Rolf is going to be the official speaker for.
Right. I think it's important to know whether, I understand whether it's the two of you or whether you have canvassed the whole block association, et cetera, because, it has a different power in that way and legitimacy, and it's important for us to know that as a community. And then I'd like to speak because it's I'm on the board, correct? Okay.
I'm
look
trying to
forward
figure
seeing-
out how to share. You can talk, Katie, if you want.
Okay. I look forward to seeing what Ralph and Sante have to show. Prior to that, I would like to say I very much appreciate the thoughtfulness of this design. I look forward to the alternatives, but my first impulse is to say that compared to other presentations, I feel like a lot of thought and care has gone into really trying to be sensitive to the area, to the context, to the size of the building, to the sight lines, to not having the mechanical show, which I'm very tired of on most of the buildings, and having the elevator shaft show. And I do, so I won't go on and on about that, but I will say one, I guess, question, suggestion, and that is whether the cornice, which is straight flat across, whether it can have some elements which give it a stop here and there at the main columns, not in a total mimic of historical cornices, but something similar to that, even if it's very minimal. And just to break it up a little bit minimally. And then the other thing I would like to know is whether you plan to put trees in front of the building. I looked at the Google Earth, and across the street there are trees on Greenpoint Avenue, so I don't think that the subway vaulting would be a problem. And we've tried to put trees into Greenpoint very much, and I think it would be very appreciated if trees, I know sometimes they're required and that sometimes people ask not to put them in.
They are required, and we have to put them in.
Okay.
In
So
answer to it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, super. So it's
Yeah.
really just about the cornice and a possibility of.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much.
We will be locating 3 of them.
I'm sorry?
We'll be putting 3 trees.
Okay, great.
And is
Thank you
there
very
any
much.
comment about the cornice? About Katie's comment about the cornice?
That's a very good observation. We will certainly look at that.
Okay.
I think something even slight, like I said, it just would harken back to the other historical buildings which you
No,
showed.
it's an appropriate observation. We'll
Okay,
absolutely
thank
look
you.
at it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Steve?
Yes, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. Very thorough and detailed, and addressing people's questions from before. A few things stood out for me that just the one things is the element or the bulkheads, on the western portion of the roof. I understand that's a challenge with, within the historic district and trying to, to blend in with the area, but just from the renderings, looking at just still look pretty colossal in terms of the way it kind of stands out. I just wonder if there's a way for some further treatment of those elements to kind of screen them a little bit, or to, dampen the kind of an imposing feeling that I'm kind of getting from that. But I, understand you gotta have elevators, so if elevators, you have to have mechanicals, but, and then I kind of echo, kind of Sante's sentiment about height and bulk. And I do also acknowledge there are taller buildings, within the district. But I think first on proximity to the buildings left and right of it on that side of Greenpoint Avenue. And I was actually walking around there today. I actually ran into Sante. We were chatting a little bit. But the kind of the viewscape of the steeples from St. Anthony's, from St. John's, really enjoy that in that particular, vantage point. And I feel like, with the additional bulk that this proposed structure would take on, that would be, that would be blocked, and so it would have, kind of be an imposing, presence on that part of the historic district. So, so that, I think just that original footprint from the 20s and the 40s, when it was that department store, there's a lot less square footage to rent out, but from purely, kind of just, the energy and so the vibe of the historic district and what's in proximity and what you can see and what you wouldn't be able to see. Those church steeples just, kind of are such prominent fixtures in our neighborhood in close proximity and from afar. And then the other thing was the window treatment. I just wonder if you played with, say, like arch windows, just having the frames arched to kind of tie in either with the former Union Bank on the corner, and I guess I'd call it the former post office building down the street, the 4-story brick building that has a big arched window. And I think some of the, the buildings on Manhattan Avenue, the old bigger buildings that maybe were department stores. And I just throwing that out. I guess it comes from a feeling of that in the stride for being contemporary with, connecting to the past, that it's maybe it's a little too heavy that way, I would say. It's just, there is a lot of fine detail going on there, which I appreciate, but I just wonder maybe if it went the other way where the windows were more open. But I don't know, it's difficult because there's so many different designs and styles going on. But that, the other thing is I agreed with, just with Trina about this, and then you've already addressed that, but the size of the sign, on top of the canopy.
Yeah.
That was it for me.
Just in response to the size of the building, again, we're zoning lets us build taller. We elected not to. And that was in large part due to the churches, which are still prominent. This is not as tall as the churches, so they're still going to read. And the other part of it is that the change in height of some of these buildings is not uncommon in the district. And that to build a 1.5-story building adjacent to that bank building, we felt would really create a kind of a wrong message. This building really needs to have, it is a single building, and to do that is doing something that is going to diminish the character of the architecture of the new building and really give very little to the bank building. And these bank buildings, there's some smaller gems in the area. There's still gems in the area, and this broken tooth of a streetscape is not uncommon in the district, and that's why we felt strongly that this was not the wrong approach to take. I'm just answering those because we asked ourselves those questions going in, but thank you.
So, thank you for that response. Appreciate it.
Guys, somehow I'm having a problem. I said I never share with WebEx, but Steve, I don't know if you're willing, I send for picture to you. I believe are important. I know you did it with your committee, you share many times. So, and I send also Rolf, if you're willing to assist, I was supposed to.
Okay, well, in the meantime, let's hear from Bozina.
Oh, yes. I thank you for your presentation. This is the second time I review this presentation. I have know the previous owners personally, the Mr. Bernhard Senior and the Junior, and I'm part of the Polish community. So this building is very special to us, and like Santa said, it had this community meaning for the Greenpoint. But we all know the times are changing. I support comments of Katie Naplotarski and Trina in reference to the material that you're suggesting to use. And I welcome this project to be completed, and work with us. We can work with you. This is the major point of our community, which is Greenpoint Avenue. It's a subway stop. We have enough of eyesore, and I'm a member of the Polish and Slavic Federal Credit Union, and believe me, all the members are really looking forward to change, because we don't want people sleeping there, all the garbage, and not being taken, the building is not being taken care of. So this is just my comments to you. Work with us and hear all of us, because we are not unreasonable people. We care about this community, and I think all of our comments should be taken very seriously. Thank you.
Del?
Yes, I would like you to respond to Steve's questions about the windows.
Well, in this type of architecture, arch windows are just, with this type of commercial building, arch windows are just not, we just think are not the right thing to do there. We felt strongly it should simply be a repetition, and that putting in an arch window in a way is although you could argue it from a pure historical point of view, I just don't think it's appropriate for a building of this nature. In terms of window treatments, yes, they can be looked at, but we're keenly aware of the history of the district. We're keenly aware of not building buildings that are simply repetitions of older buildings. We think that is not the way. The building needs to speak of its time. It needs to be respectful, and we have done a lot of this work. We've built lots of buildings in historic districts that are in spirit connected directly to the districts, but we don't believe in simple borrowing from historic examples. So we would defend that and that position.
The other question Steve had to do with the bulkhead, or is there simply no?
Well, yeah, the bulkhead, that's an interesting question. If you look at the floor plan of the building, you see there's one place to put the core. If you're going to get, this is not a big building, by the way. This is a little building in terms of its floor plate for an office use. If it's a medical use or if it's an office use, it's not a big floor plate. So the only place to put the bulkhead really is against an exterior wall, and it's been minimized. And we felt, yes, you're going to see it, and there's no way to camouflage it. But what we did do is we used something that has been done throughout time, and which is to change the material of it, so that the building visually ends at one level, and then there is this addition to it, which is changed in material, which would be a standing seam metal. And you see that a lot in historic districts where it's a copper, it's a copper bulkhead. It's something that has a freer form, unrelated to the formal architectural aspects of the building. So I understand that, and we have done everything we can to minimize it. we're going to continue to work with elevator manufacturers to see if we can squeeze another foot or two out of the height, if we can do something with the stair to get it down. So we'll continue to work on that. By the way, we do understand that issue, but you have to have one. We cannot, by code, we have to bring up a stair in that location, regardless of the fourth floor component. That a bulkhead has to come up in that area. But that's something we're aware of. We're continuing to work on.
Okay. Are there any other committee members who have questions? And Steve, were you able to receive Sante's pictures, and can you show them?
Yes, I have them loaded up.
Okay, should we look at them now?
Yeah, so Sante, are these yours or Rolf's?
Sante, you're muted.
Sorry. Yes, Steve. The photos, that 4 or 5 photos are mine. And then there is the PDF, the folder, that the presentation, that's Rolf.
Okay.
Rolf is actually a block association.
Okay, so do you want, Sante, do you want to show your photos?
Yeah, my photo, just so I can repoint to what I was saying.
Okay, quick. Quickish. So Rolf, maybe in the meantime, you can explain, is with the presentation you're giving, just to Katie's question, is it something, has your whole block voted on it? Is your whole block aware of it? How does it represent the block association?
Hi. First I'd like to say that you were making a reference that in my presentation are Sante's pictures, which is not the case. I did an independent kind of viewshed analysis of the surrounding area relating specifically to 144 Greenpoint Avenue. I just want to make that clear. And to answer your question, the way our block association works, we have our committees as well. And initially they're aware, the core people are aware that I will be presenting. They haven't seen this presentation, however. Basically because I've been working on it until the last, few minutes. So I hope that answers.
I saw the
your question.
developer presentations.
Yeah. Excuse me?
I saw the development presentation.
Okay, I want to explain to the presenters. So Rolf is not part of the committee. He is a community member from Milton Street, which is, where Milton Street is, the street behind. And so what we've just done is gone through the committee members. Sante's going to run through his pictures, and then we'll be done. Basically, the committee will be done with you guys, but if you want to stick around and see Rolf's presentation, you're more than welcome to. And then after Rolf's presentation and the committee asks questions of Rolf, then we will deliberate on a resolution. So that's what's going to happen. But first, Steve, if you're able to pull up Sante's pictures.
Yes. Just 1 second here. Okay.
Can we go on that? There are some historical tax block from 1940. Yeah, this is actually Milton Street. We're talking about church tower bells. And, it's very small, Steve.
I think we got away from.
You're in Transmitter Park. Did I send you Transmitter Park? No, I don't think so.
I think I mixed some of my photos with yours.
Okay, this is one to show to please. Okay, so that's the bank building. I know, you know, in the presentation, I heard like, you know, the building next wasn't distinguished building, but, you know, we can't see that, but there was a cornice and there was a stained glass with a lead beading, you know, and it's pretty simple. And just to show the next, there was a height which was in scale. We can see here how the two building out together. And so my point is, I understand the cast iron gone, but his scale, I believe, helped the bank to not to be overwhelmed, not to be dwarf, you know, has some importance next to this building. I find it personally has a good balance. And then you see from the other picture why with these two buildings staying at this scale, we have the visibility of those, you know, church, the Tower Bell, and you know, and then you'll see after that there was a rendering done. This what we see, this scale is still maintained. This is like a prop. It's a plastic aluminum. I don't know what it is, but it's as you call it, it's a Las Vegas prop. But the scale is still there. We can still see what you see, that vision of the church from that angle. I can see Instagram and transmit. And
That's all I have.
and then this was probably one of the broker when I don't know when this was exactly. And this you can see that there is a contemporary reinterpretation. I mean, it is not even a purist job, you know. I'm not commenting on the color, on the detail of the cornice, but he's recalling that massing, and I feel is in balance, is in scale. I agree with Bosina. You know, definitely we don't want to have the building with graffiti, but it doesn't mean that because we don't want to have the homeless there and we don't want to have the graffiti. The only way to have it is that we need to overscale a building and disregard entirely some rule of harmony that you know, and that's why we're here, because this is a landmark, and the bank, it's a beautiful building, and I still feel that it's that transition, that scale there is still in harmonious, you know. And I heard a voice, I heard saying that before, that the building in this scale all around, and I know they've lost any beauty, they lost the cornice, they lost the detail, but you know, in my building or in other building, our neighbors, they are asked, even if we lost the cornice, we lost something, we are asked to replace. You know, and I'm not saying that's to be done as a purist, replicating exactly, but as you did that, you recognize there was a cornice, you did a contemporary cornice there, and that's fine. But the massing, it's a key element, you know, it's an important element. They'll still will emphasize this building next, and consequentially is not going to impose some quality of life issue, you know, and that's a community issue. I understand it, but that's also what is happening, because there's at the back, we have like long-time residents living at the rear. They're going to have like all this glass and all these facts facing them, and even more commercial activity with that. So there is a multiple issue that the community feel, but from a landmark point of view, I believe these are fantastic. The material could change, everything could change, but the scale telling us that something else smaller can exist there, you know, and we don't need to have the graffiti there for sure. But the graffiti happened because nobody's been taking care of the building once the building was purchased. And Steve, there is another picture there. Yeah, that's who we show, the church. And those pictures in black and white on 1940, you presented, but the bank was always cropped out. Those pictures, they shouldn't be cropped out because those are the historic 1940 tax blocks photo. Those are the ones that tell us what there was there. And, you know, and I know that, but other people, other members of the community don't know, other members of this committee may not know. And it's important, I believe, to say that for the record. I believe.
Well, for the record, for the record, we have researched this in depth and looked at as many tax lot photos as we can. We have not been attempting at all to deceive or conceal information. Just for the record, I want to make that clear. We've done extensive research in the district, and we have we have not modified views for the intention of deceiving.
No, I was saying, but the bank building was cropped out of these images, and and that's all.
I'd also like to let the record state that this building fell into disrepair far before we became the owners. We are the recent owners of this property. So the graffiti, the trash, the homeless, that problem existed long before we acquired it.
No, I wasn't referring to it. I was saying the moment the building was out for sale and went to this transition time. Of course, it wasn't necessary to you. I'm showing picture of another broker. It wasn't related to you. And so I know it went through a time of sale and transaction and whatever happened. But not when the owner was a member of the community at the building. And the building never had any impact on the quality of life on Milton Street that I want to remember. Just a reminder to the committee, has pretty intact donuts, as a church with stained glass, and probably rough images. I believe it will show that, and the committee can have other indication of the contest. Okay, thank you again. Thank you.
Okay, I think my microphone isn't working.
We can hear you, Trina.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay. I don't know, my computer just kind of crashed. Okay. I think, Rolf, if you would like to show us your presentation.
Okay, well, thank you. Steve, are you able to put the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
So let me just begin. My name is Rolf Karl. I'm a 35-year resident of North Brooklyn. Back 20 years ago, I was part of a group in the neighborhood that fought a very large power plant that wanted to be built on our waterfront. And along with the Pratt Institute, with their visual team there, I was part of a viewshed analysis of how this large structure would impact the neighborhood. So I learned a lot, and I'm trying to bring some of those skills into this presentation tonight. I'm representing the Milton Street Block Association. I have a home on Milton Street, which, by the way, was owned by Vincent Brunhard Sr., who was an immigrant baker. He died 10 years ago in his 90s. He and his son, Vincent Jr., started the Polonaise from the bake shop on that location. And as Sante mentioned, it was a community center. For example, the Block Association's first, our first meetings was in the Polonaise, and it was donated by the Brunhards. So the Brunhards live well in our memory. So that said, let's go to the first slide. So this is the slide from the developer, and it was included in last month's community board hearing, as well as tonight's presentation. I believe it's the same drawing. And essentially, it's a before and after picture. And tonight, it was referred to that both pictures were taken, and I quote, from the same vantage point. Now, if you look closely at the picture, there are some things that indicate to me that it's not from the same vantage point. The perspective is not the same, and clearly the photograph on the left, the existing photograph, is taken further up the block, and the rendering on the right is taken further down. So what I did, a viewshed analysis, first you have to familiarize yourself with the area. And that's how I approached this. I looked at this drawing and I said, wait, what's going on? Let me look some more. So I wandered a little bit around Milton Street, around the block, and wherever I thought this project would have an impact. So clearly, as I'm indicating here, the image on the left is not the same vantage point as the image on the right. So I tried to find that vantage point that they used. And Steve, the next slide. And in front, there's a restaurant shed that is blocking the Polonaise. And this is a much more accurate view of an accurate street view of what the mass of this building will be blocking. You know, the minute I realized that, I really started looking at the presentation, and you know, our churches have been totally ignored in this presentation. You know, often you'll see a little steeple here or there, but this is a kind of major, a major point, a major view shed that's going to be blocked by the mass of this building. Steve, the next slide. I really, you know, on the left, that arch, that's the Polonaise. So there's a lot of richness. I mean, the developers are speaking about the richness of their project, and there's a certain amount of richness that it will be blocking. And I hope, you know, I hope that's clear between these, from their before and after picture, that it's not a correct representation of how the project will look before and after. Steve, the next one. So this was a view, a rendering also at the community board meeting last month. And the presenter said that this is a view, and I listened to the YouTube video of the hearing. Excuse me. And I heard the developer say that this is a view that Landmarks Preservation asked them for, which I think is a loaded question if that's the case, because if questions were asked to present this view, to create this view, why were they? And an aside on that, what other questions were asked by Landmarks, if I understood that correct? And I think that's something this committee should really pursue. If that is the case, I think there's many unanswered questions as far as their presentation. And in a nutshell, I think their presentation is distracting. They're going from a detail here, a detail there, but they're never really giving you a nuts and bolts, straight on comparison of the impact of this building. And so let me go forward. As I explored my neighborhood that I know well, Steve, next slide. This is the St. Anthony's. It's built on the highest point of Greenpoint. It's the most prominent landmark of Greenpoint. And again, the presentation with these developers, they hardly concentrated on our church, on this one and St. John's on Milton Street. I mean, it's really the essence of our community, and they just kind of, you know, glaze over it with little, you know, peaks of the steeple here and there in dribs and drabs. So I think that's, you know, that was a major key to me, that this presentation is not thorough. They're more concentrating on what color brick than a very basic approach to a very basic approach that a presentation should be. Very clear and very simple. Next slide. So shadows, that's another way of kind of understanding a neighborhood, to see how these massive buildings are treated with by light. And you know, I got up early and I just followed the sun one morning. Next slide. And here's St. John's behind the bank building. You can see the dental work up there in the bottom left. And I think what's curious here is that the building right in front of the church, or you can see a little keystone type thing, structure. And then right behind it on the church, you actually see the stained glass window of St. John's. And I think that there was some kind of respect back then when that building was built, that they realized the proximity of the building to the altar and they respected it. I think that's probably why that's probably why it's a low building. Next slide. And here you can see how the light begins to hit on St. John's. Next slide. Here is the inside of the church, and we have the stained glass windows. And next slide. So as I'm walking the neighborhood, I see my neighbor Jadwiga, and she owns the buildings that you can see in this diagram from the developer. It says 4-story building. So she owns those buildings. And I told her about the project. I showed her some pictures, and she was really horrified, I must say. She had not heard about it. I asked her if I could go on her roof, which she took me up there. And I took some pictures up there. I was curious as to what was back there. And just a little aside here, we're looking down, and you'll see kind of in the center right, there's a black rectangle. That represents the Polonaise roof. Now, in this presentation tonight and in the presentation at the community board, the architect is saying that this is an existing terrace. This is not an existing terrace. This is a roof. This building has never had an outdoor use. And that's one of the things that we're learning, that a lot of my neighbors, the Milton Street Block Association, that we're realizing that this is outdoor commercial space. And as everything happens in this neighborhood, it turns into an alcohol related party. So, so the picture on the right is their rendering, and you can see the church and on the bottom left. So we're gonna look, next slide, we're gonna look down. Next slide. So we're looking, oh, no, we're not looking down. We're in the alley. On the right side is the Polonaise, the brown, brown side. The other side is Jadwiga's building. And then we're looking at the side of the church, and, we see the altar, that's the altar structure, and stained glass windows. Next slide. So these would be windows that would face the project, and they're not very, in my estimation, it's 10 feet from kitty corner, and these windows actually open. So the window we're seeing here is, I believe, the one on the right. Next slide.
Sorry, Carl, Ralph, where's that alley?
Okay, let's go back to the alley. No, keep it on that one, Steve. Keep it on I'm sorry. This alley, you would like to know where that is? Next slide.
The previous picture.
But let's go to the next slide. It has this next slide. Next slide. So here is the alley. No, I'm sorry. Go back. So if you're looking down right now, you'll see on the left, it says 3-story church, and that's the church. Now, you can see the altar, that triangular black structure, and then you see the 4-story buildings, right? 4-story building, 4-story building, 4-story building. So that is the alley, and that is the side of the Polonaise, what I just showed you.
But can you see that directly from Greenpoint Avenue when you're standing at Greenpoint Avenue?
No, you can't, but you can see the altar windows. This is more of a reference of how it will affect the neighborhood. And next slide.
Alfred, you're saying that the light will be blocked in the church, the light coming to those windows? Is that?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't finish that point. This I don't know. The sun is heads in that direction. I think a real analysis would have to be done. It's what got me to kind of really look at things. In the extreme position of the sun, you know, at the lowest or highest point, whatever.
Sun comes from the south, so it would go across the front of the building.
Right, right. But certainly what I think, you know, the point here is also is that, you know, the mass will darken the windows we're looking at right now. And these are all things you have to consider about a building being this massive and bulky. Next slide. Next slide. And yeah, go back. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm sorry. You know, one of my main points here is that the noise, if these are commercial spaces, would go right into the church. These are, you know, like anyone's windows, they vibrate. And again, the proximity, you know, Trina, I was just trying to show the proximity in the back and trying, you know, kind of how I got there. So
You're good.
okay, next slide. You know, again, here, Sante made, can I see what the next slide is so I don't get off track here? No, go back. I'm sorry, I apologize. Okay, you know, this, again, this is the the Polonaise that we all know. And, you know, Sante made the point that, you know, now it's more recent that it's an eyesore. And I kind of, excuse me, Mr. Katz said, you know, that that's the way it was when he got it. But, you know, basically to be a good neighbor, you clean it up, do something. You know, at the community board meeting was brought up, you know, what's happening there? Are there needles there? And you know, it's about neighborhood and about ownership and about being proud and want to see your neighbor on the street and not have a mess. So I think I want to reiterate that because it has been brought up tonight. And, you know, I'll leave it at that. So the next slide, please. Here, as you saw in their presentation, Milton Street did ask for some, you know, some view sheds from our block. And this one, they say it won't have any views. Okay. The other side, which I don't have a picture of, the other side of the building on the right, they said would have some views. But as it was presented at the community board was first, we had, well, we had to ask for something because we could see it would be seen. So and as they're presenting it, they kind of minimized it and said, oh, it won't be seen, oh, it will be seen, but only when the gate is open, when the door is open. And then they, you know, you step back and they have, you know, a 4-story stairwell. And then they say, oh, but it's not a lot. But you know what? Whether it's a lot or not, we should not have had to ask for it. And again, my point is that there's such a rich neighborhood, you know, with our churches, and it's all been kind of glossed over. And let me have the next slide, please. Next slide. You know, again, this is the viewpoint that is going to be blocked by this structure. This structure, you know, today I got an updated version from the developer of drawings. And now they've labeled where their photograph was taken, the before and after photograph. And I went to those 2 spots today to see if their photograph was taken. Actually, I apologize, it's a rendering, it's not a photograph. But was their rendering actually from that vantage point? And it's not. You know, it's more of this one. And again, you see the full detail of St. Anthony's Church. And in fact, it's a frontal view of the church. It's not a backyard view, and it's been there forever. The mass of the building they're proposing would block this view. And I think they, you know, I'm going to use the word deceptive. I think they've been deceptive with their presentation. Now, I'm going to keep, well, the last thing I'm going to say is that I think there are a lot of questions that should be asked. You know, frankly, I have many examples of things I think are wrong, but I'm going to spare everyone's time. But I think it's up to your committee to really ask those questions. And if they're not answered, you know, this project really shouldn't go forward. So next slide, I think that's it. Well, no, here's the drawing. the rendering that they did. Today, we got a new one that has the street on the right I'm talking about. Today, we got a new version of this with 2 street addresses on it. One, I believe, is 123, the other 125. This picture was taken at I believe 119, and the other one further down the block. They have these pictures 2 or 3 buildings away, where in reality they're 9 buildings away. So, you know, next slide. Okay, so I think that's it. So,
Yeah.
you know, the bottom line is they're drawing on the left, the before or after. They told you tonight that, I quote, from the same vantage point. This is not the same vantage point. And that kind of, you know, that incorrectness bleeds through their presentation. And I really thank you for the opportunity to speak. I hope I haven't been long-winded, and I hope I've been clear. Again, I have many examples I could have shown tonight, but we'd be here till, you know, after midnight. Thank you, Chair McKeever.
Thank you, Ralph. No, I think the pictures are pretty powerful. And I think what really stuck out to me was the image that had been, which I have a printout of here, that where it's the front-on view of the Polonaise and then the side view where you don't see the church, but if you were to take the same view of the building, of the Polonaise that you have of the building, you really see the St. Anthony spire behind it. What we're being asked for is to approve oh, Del, your hand is up. I think your hand is up.
It is, but please finish what you were.
Oh, okay. What we're being asked for is to approve a certificate of appropriateness, and we have to decide what's appropriate for this site. And Del, why don't you go, and then we can pick up the discussion.
I would be interested to know whether you did question them about the steps that we have on of what I think are lovely and beautiful church steeples.
Having trouble hearing it, Del.
Your voice comes and goes.
Okay, so I would like to know if Landmarks did speak to them and explore the effect that this building would have on the beautiful church steeples. Did you hear me?
We heard you.
Okay.
Can someone from
The answer to that question is no.
church steeples?
When we met with the Landmarks Commission, the topic of whether or not the church steeple would be seen, or any church steeple, that did not come up. No, Landmarks did not raise that question.
So I guess the sense I have, the concern I have is when you look at older pictures, for one thing, there was a view that of these churches that apparently will be just blocked out. The other concern I have is that in the older pictures, it strikes me that the bank next door looks the beauty of that bank, I think, is almost made to be. It's almost reduced.
We're losing you again.
It seems to me the bank is almost reduced to an afterthought at this point. And because I think maybe because of the monolithic character, the book character.
We lost you at monolithic character.
Well, I think the building is very monolithic, and it kind of overshadows the bank. And it kind of reduces the bank to almost an afterthought instead of bringing out the beautiful, unique character of the bank. That's it.
Okay. Other committee members?
I have a question. what they're doing is as of right, and they could even go 1 story higher, correct? I mean,
That's correct,
Um,
but they have to be approved by landmarks. They can, zoning
Right.
would allow them to go much higher. And they,
right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can say, well, I just had that question. I have more things to say, but I just have that question.
well, do you want to say the more things you have to say?
Yeah, I don't mind the size of it. I kind of like the way that it mirrors. It doesn't bother me. I like that it's the same height as the other buildings on the block. Like, it just makes it feel balanced in a way rather than having the hodgepodge. I appreciate Sante's rendering very much. I think it looks really good. It's just that I don't respond to their design as it being, you know, too huge, an elephant on the block or something. I just don't feel that way. I do think that it's quite attractive. I feel like in terms of the church, I think it's really good points. We so need to be aware of this. But if you, I mean, you need to walk maybe 10 feet that one way or the other, that then you wouldn't be blocked. So it's I think it's an important, very, very important point, but I'm not so sure, you know, if I'm walking on that side of the street, I wouldn't be able to see the steeple anyway. If I'm on the other side of the street, I might not even look over there. So I'm just saying that it's very important points, but I'm just not sure how much it would actually matter to me. And I'm not sure that landmarks would say that if we were to vote for it to be the size that it is now and the stories that it is now, I'm not sure that they would go for that. I mean,
That's one of the fears I have. The pragmatic approach would be to make comments on the building itself, the building as presented.
I mean, it is
maybe bring down the ceiling height,
right.
ask for improved materials, and talk about the canopy.
When it was rezoned, yes.
Can I just respond to that real
quickly?
quick?
I'll just finish really quickly. When it was
Well,
rezoned,
but it's specifically that point. I just want to remind you of the application on Collier Street of the building across from the bank, that the community felt it was too tall of a building and pushed back hard, and they reduced the height of the building in the end. So the appropriateness question, I think, trumps the zoning potential.
That's a really good point, Steve. I did feel, and last to be said, that is a very good point. We really made a big difference on that building. I will just say, I felt that building was way out of scale. I don't feel that about this one. I guess because it's the same size as the whole rest of the block on both sides.
Can I interject very fast? But I believe is the context next to the bank, which I said earlier and other understood. And I know there is a taller building somewhere else on the block at the corner, but the bank is a particular relevant landmark, and that was my first impression before I went in detail. Is kind of overwhelmed. And something in landmarks at the commission level, when these applications are considered beyond the detail, the material, and all the things, the commission considered the effect of the proposed work on neighborhood building and on the spatial character of the district, and those church, those streetscape are what makes landmark. It's not just a brick, is the character, and those streetscape, I believe, are extremely important, and the proportion and the diversity of height, those scale that change. Otherwise, we have this Berlin Wall, that in front of us. That's what makes a virus, fabric like a live organism. I'm Italian. Maybe I grew up more with this live organism, but that's what I feel. That's what I feel when I'm in Greenpoint. There is such a very European feeling because of this historic fabric.
There's a certain liveliness to jumping the scale a little bit there.
Yeah, and I'll just say that we have around New York City a lot of these, and they're actually celebrated. You have a one-story building that's a little deli or cafe, and then you have these huge buildings next to it. I think that the presenter said something like a lost tooth or something. I don't know what it was, but I don't think that's a broken tooth. Broken tooth. I don't. To me, this is just to me. It just doesn't offend me. Let me put it that way.
Bozina.
Yes, I fully agree with Katie Navlatarski. Like I said before, I'm a member of the credit union, and the credit union will welcome this project. And I think this community has to look at the bigger picture. This property is in a very complicated spot. We have a subway which goes underneath of the property. So the way they designed it, I think I agree a little bit with Trina. Maybe we could work with some materials and the signage of what they're proposing. That those things can be worked out. But I will, I will support this. I honestly will support this, and it doesn't strike me as something that is really not within the guidance of the landmark and what community needs. We need a nice looking building next to the credit union. We truly do need that.
Okay, there are two people that have their hands up that haven't spoken yet. First, William, then Corey.
And thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Before it was closed down, it was a club, and I have to tell you, when we moved into Williamsburg in 2005, I would go there, and there was a lot of activity of criminal nature of selling drugs inside the club. So I was pleased when it was shut down. Unfortunately, when it shut down, it did not stop the drug activity. And I think I mentioned it on the previous community board meeting that, I have neighbors that call me to pick up the syringes, and it's horrendous. I'm for bringing back life. I understand the concerns, but I think you could find a balance. The sooner that is an operating place of business, I think will bring health and beauty to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Corey.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate so many comments that have been made tonight. I think I probably echo most of what Bozena had just said, and a little bit on William. I think that there could be absolutely ways in which this project could look more historical. I think it has a bit of a modern institutional vibe now. That being said, it is much better than an empty building, and I think it ultimately will be an benefit to Greenpoint Avenue. And if it is that we don't have, would it be nicer to see the church spire? It would be, absolutely. I think it's a question as to whether or not that's something that is important to the committee to really try and push for. Or if we think that that isn't something that can happen, I do think that it's generally a nice looking building. Perhaps, some more historical features or arches could be added. But I, generally speaking, am in favor of it.
Any other committee members have?
No, but I noticed Philip had his hand up for a while there. Philip
Okay.
Katz. Yeah.
Thank you. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. I'm not on the committee. I just wanted to say, Mr. Ralph Carl, a proper study would need to be done. I imagine that our building would minimally impact the view of the church steeple, which is quite magnificent. But I think if you want to do a fair comparison, your photos were taken close up to the building. As we all know, the closer you get to the building, the less you see of anything except the building. And I think your distances might have been a little off. I would ask you to go back and redo that. As you move farther down Greenpoint towards the water, of course, you're going to see more and more. That's one point. A second point regarding St. John's Church, which is magnificent, by the way. Unfortunately, I haven't yet been inside. I will go inside. The most of those stained glass, only the stained glass window closest to the altar looks over that alley. The rest of them look right against Jadwiga's building, which is maybe 5-8 feet. I don't know how big the side yard is there. So we're not going to impact those at all. I don't even know if we're going to impact the one that looks on the alley, because as somebody said, the sun, that depends on how the sun rises and sets back there. So I think that your presentation might need a little tweaking to be a fair comparison. And the final point somebody mentioned was I hope it seems like you were the alcohol and dancing and I'm sure loud music that went on at the Polonaise was a beloved part of the community back then, but all of a sudden now you seem to be very concerned. We have no plans to rent to a dance hall or a bar or anything like that. Thank you.
Rolf, did you want to respond? You're muted.
Well, first of all, no disrespect, Mr. Katz, but I would like to hear your the comment you made come from your architect, who perhaps knows a little bit more about view sheds. My photographs were taken, roughly on the sidewalk. I'm 5'4", so I raised my camera up slightly to 5'6". But they were, it's your photographs that are willy-nilly taken in the middle of the road. As my first comparison showed, there's no relationship as to the vantage point that was represented tonight.
Okay, Rolf, I think I've got to stop you. We can't go down
Thank
this.
you.
We
But
can't do this.
if my presentation is going to be presented, then I think I have a right to defend it.
No,
Thank you.
fine.
Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm going to make a resolution, a proposal for resolution. And I think that there are two very different points of view. And I'm going to represent the more Katie Bozina point of view with a little nuance in it, some of the points that I brought up first. And then we can take the temperature, we can take a vote and see where the committee is on it. But I think that otherwise we'll just go back and forth. And I think that we kind of all know what we're talking about. So I'm going to propose a resolution that we accept the project with a recommendation that the ceiling heights on the third floor and the penthouse be reconsidered. Right now there's 14 feet and 11 feet. And if those got brought down, maybe some of the view shed would be, maybe some of the view would be restored, and maybe it wouldn't look quite so large next to the bank. I also am going to ask for, in light of the richness of the materials in the other commercial buildings in the district, that I guess that Landmarks ask the architects to go back and relook at their materials and perhaps have different look at the materials and have it be more in keeping with the historic district, and also that they look at the size of the canopies and the signage, but in general that we accept the proposal.
William Vega seconds.
Wait, a motion wasn't made yet. It was just our
okay.
suggestion.
So
Okay.
Why we want to rush this? I believe the community is disregarded. There is a community There is people that don't reside in that community, and there is ROF, and there is a community there that will be impacted outside even on Landmark. And I believe what are we? It's a point I need to make really before we went there and shovel in another motion, because a lot of people spend time at work, even looking at things and bringing things out that are very tangible, very tangible, and they were not presented to us. And what are we? We are the community board. And there is no bylaws that tell, yes, we analyze, we approve, we should preserve Landmark, but everything that we do should be to safeguard the community. We know that there is a development, and I heard that there was a bar. Well, actually, it wasn't 2005. 2005 was a full pollinate. This happened only a few years ago when the building was sold, and there were sort of pop-up. The bar, whatever place happened there was a pop-up while they were making the deal to sell the building. And so before was an active, well taken care building that any activity was happening inside. There was no roof, there were no terrace, there was no privacy, was intruding the neighborhood. And I know that's as of right, but it will not be as of right, as Dale has said, because this is a landmark, and quality of life. And Dale brought last time about another issue. It's a very important point. The community should respect when there is community that is impacted there, and when they don't live there, they should listen at people who lives there. Because I know that, he said, oh, we have no intention, Mr. Katz said, to have a bar there or to have, but it's use group 6. Anything could happen there, but people have bedroom behind there, that building. Is that people will never be able to go away. Rent control, they live affordably there. I know a family with disability, they don't have an option. And maybe not now, but maybe Mr. Katz will sell the building, as he sold the Soho House, which I mentioned last time, was a very controversial location, bar, rooftop. This could be a Soho House actually, and that's for wealthy people, and it's an exclusive access. Nobody can. It's not just money that will allow to access a place like that. And I know Mr. Katz has not this intention. He has secured some tenant.
Okay, what are you talking about?
No, I'm talking about that sometimes we have to consider the consequences, the church, the quality of life, and the tool we have is Landmark, and that's a tool we have. We're not saying that they don't have to do that, but let's be aware of that. We use the tool. We don't have many tools, but we should always safeguard the community. That's what I'm trying to say. And when people don't live there, said, oh, I'm not bothered by. I remember in 2010, I went there. It's not really relevant and doesn't respect a community that is there.
Katie.
I like your idea of resolution, Trina. I want to again say I really appreciate the input of Rolf and Sante. I think they're really important points, but I do agree with your ideas. I would also add to revisit the treatment of the cornice, and then I would also, I don't know if this is fitting, but that they're not allowed to sell air rights. Does that come into this at all? Don't mean to open a can of worms.
I don't know.
I just want to echo what you say, Trina, and just revisit the cornice.
And Sante and Rolf, my presenting this is not out of disrespect. It's that I think what I want to do is invite the committee to vote one way or the other, and so that there can be a counter proposal if more committee members feel that the building is completely inappropriate at that height. I personally, I think that this is a building that Landmarks will probably accept. And so if we just say we want a building that's 2 stories that respects the original height of the building, I'm afraid we're not going to be able to get other comments in. And so it's really, I think there are two ways of looking at it. There's the way to look at it where which I think is in an ideal world is the way to go, which is that we want a two-story building. We want a building that's the same size of the original building, that respects the height and bulk of what was there before, and allows for the view shed to be more uniform and the churches to be seen. But I'm concerned that Landmarks is going to approve the building the way it is, and the community board one will have lost its opportunity to speak. We can die on our sword in a way, or we can say that we just want something that's very pure, or we can look at what's being presented and think about ways that we can augment it, or ask Landmarks to augment it. And the resolution that Katie and I are working on putting together right now, or constructing, is one direction. And I think it's up to committee members to figure out which direction they want to vote, and vote with their heart. And we're a committee. And so that's all I have to say.
Paul has his hand raised. He hasn't spoken.
Oh, Paul, please.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Trina. I would be happy to support this proposed project. I think it's a elegant design, thoughtful presentation. To me, does not feel, inordinately large for this street. I think, I would probably vote in favor of it, with maybe, even with some of these conditions or other ideas, though I don't see anything problematic about the materials or anything like that. In terms of ceiling heights, I mean, I suspect for commercial space, if it were lower, it would probably make it a lot less marketable. So I think that's something that should be considered. But I think it's a nice, thoughtful project, and I appreciated the presentation.
Steve, is your hand up? Thanks, Paul.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I'm struggling with this. I'm very torn. I think, on face value, I'm okay with the height. But I hear, the passion of my neighbors, especially the ones that live in Milton Street and nearby, and the history of the neighborhood. Right now, if you walk further east on Greenpoint Avenue, the Polonaise blocks the view of the St. Anthony's Church steeple. But that said, as you walk west, you have that beautiful open vista of that. But I'm just struggle with the general design. This neighborhood, it's been dominated by this Italianate architecture with cornices, etc. But it's been a beautiful architecture and design that's persisted, well over 100 years. And then there are these other beautiful jewels like the Merchants Bank on Franklin and Greenpoint, and the former, original of the Union Bank. And I was thinking, is this the design we want for the next 100 years on this block? Granted, I know people want to get away from the blight and the casino nature of the previous designs, but I don't want us to sell ourselves short. And people are emphasizing more of a connection to the historical design of the area. So I feel like we need really to emphasize that. But I know we're not here to vote on the use of the building, but I feel and hear the pain of the folks who've lived with, the inundation of bars in our neighborhood and that type of element, and working families and parents and older folks who struggle, to be in their homes, and so, and Sante brought up a history, I'm assuming it's accurate, of these kind of exclusive clubs in other parts of the city. And I'll tell you this, just be warned if you've brought liquor licenses to Community Board 1, but you go through quite a sausage grinder here, as others will tell you, other block associations. So So, yeah, but at least in terms of finding some common ground, others are basically fine with the design, but there have heard some people who want to go deeper with history, with materials, et cetera. I want to highly emphasize that. I appreciate the elegancy and the thought process that the architects had and what they presented so far, but I'm really said again, for the history of the neighborhood, to make, go outside, go out, push that envelope out further. So I don't know, I still haven't made my mind yet, but those are my comments right now.
How could you articulate what you just said into a resolution in terms of pushing the, I don't know what language one would use.
Well, what were you going to present in terms of people have mentioned materials and going deeper connection of history, whatever the heck that means. And I don't have the architectural vocabulary to articulate that in greater detail.
I know, I
terms
don't
of-
either.
But I think the commission will understand that. I know the architects and the designers, I think they understand what that means. They look down the street, look,
Well, maybe something less generic in terms of design and materials.
yeah, it just reminds me a little bit of, what was a modern bank building like in the 70s. That's kind of, it reminds me a little bit of that. I mean, that's maybe a little harsh, but I feel like, there are, I said, some nice elements in there, but I feel like that's just kind of a note that I'm struck there. And I don't know. So, I don't know if that helps you, Trina, or makes it worse.
I don't know.
Also, Trina, another comment, because I heard, there is a little bit of history, because, I remember years ago, I wasn't a board member, and the Milton Street Block Association came with an extension that was proposed. It was a 98 Greenpoint Avenue. And I remember, the Milton Street Block, I went over there, actually it was close to my house. And they were proposing to extend on the entire block. I remember, I didn't know Bosina at that time. He said, oh, really? I'm sorry. They came here and they told us that it was as of right? So I hear all this time, it was as of right. And at that time, all the block association were many. I believe Steve Chesler came to, despite the fact he wasn't living there. I don't know if he was part of this committee at that time. And we went to the public hearing. And as a matter of fact, I don't remember, there was one of the architects, one of the commissioner that literally stated, because it's not true. There is the rare stated, I believe it's too intrusive. And that extension was pushed back, I don't remember, 18 feet, 20 feet of what it was proposed. So just a reminder for everybody that, that's recognized. I cannot still understand what's wrong with toning down. Why, I'm assuming must be some political input, why certain things happen. Because from a community point of view, I could only feel naturally trying to maintain the scale in a neighborhood that is the most developed neighborhood in the entire United States, where we have tower, we have expansion everywhere. This is the only very tiny historic district. Literally, we can count the number of historic buildings by the hundreds here, and I don't understand what's wrong with really redimension it to what is already there. But
Can I say something, Trina?
Please.
First of all, we have to move on because we still have something to bring up in new business, and we can't. I think we've pretty much gone through. Everyone's had a chance to speak, but I do want to say that I'm very much in line with Steve. I'm conflicted. It's not that the building itself on its own is not a nice looking building, and it's not for me it's not the height of the building. It's, as I said, it's such a monolithic block, but I'm also thinking that perhaps the suggestions that you've made, Trina, might actually answer some of my concerns. Might make it so that it's not just this big block. I'm not trying to insult it. It's not just this big square block, but to me, it does, I just don't think that it heightens the specialness of the bank next door, and I don't think it in any way brings out the historic nature of this neighborhood. And although I know people don't want the place to stay the way it is, this is a landmarks application. Let's remember that. But I do like the suggestions that you, Trina, and that Steve have made. So I just want to say that. And I do think we really need to vote one way or another soon, because we can't stay beyond 10, and we do have to discuss. I'm not going to ask for a vote. I would rather not have a vote tonight. I would rather wait till November 30th, but we do need to talk about these, the fact that there are questions being raised by the developers about the extended work hours, and I do want to fill in the committee on what's going on, what at least what I think is going on. Anyway, that's what I have to say.
Can I just say something quickly, Trina?
Please.
I agree with what Del said. I would also like to say, in terms of a different height, if there were a petition from the people on the block, if there were other block members, if there had been meetings, I don't know if there were, if it was really a consensus from the block and an outpouring of support for minimized height, I don't know anything about that. So therefore, I'm not feeling like I need to,
Okay, Ralph, really quick.
So yeah, thanks.
It will be really quick, but on Katie's point, if you feel it's important to have the public speaking session filled and dominated by Milton Street residents at next week's full board meeting, we can certainly do that. You might like to hear about other issues as well. So, what point would it be for Milton Street residents who I've spoken to, I've asked to come to this meeting, when they're not really going to have a voice to speak? There's not enough time. You've already stated that. So if you feel it's important, we could dominate. We can also go to the CB1 meeting. I will certainly be there, and I will certainly be at landmarks when this is in front of them.
I know a few people who live on Milton Street and don't know anything about this. So
well, outreach, Katie, outreach.
I'm just trying to be representative of the community at large, and I just don't know. I don't know how to do that exactly. That's all. Yeah.
Let me just say that we always want people from the community to come and speak, either at committees or to the full board. So yes, if there are people who want to come, definitely sign up and speak.
Okay, Bozina.
I think we said so many things, and at this point, I think we're wasting our time.
Yeah.
There is a number of community members that are willing to support this project with certain requirements that we want to the landmark committee to know, that landmark commission to know that we are worried about. If we don't act, our action is going to be moot at some point, because landmark commission, they do evaluate the neighborhood. They see the project and the design, and if it's going to be, it's going to be up to them, approve it or not. So at this point, I think we have to make a stand. What are we doing here in this committee?
Well, Zena, I think I just said it. We need to vote now. We need to put together a motion and vote. We can't just not vote. We have
So
to do this.
the motion that what I talked about before was to approve the project. Maybe we can preface the approval with strong concern about the church towers and the effect of building of this size on the neighborhood. And then we can mention the potential lowering of the ceiling heights on the 3rd and 4th floor. And we can also ask that the design get reassessed by Landmarks, looking at something a bit less generic and less generic in both design and materials. And I can finesse the language of that, but that's basically the bulk of what the motion is.
So you've made the motion, yes?
Oh, and also revisit the treatment of the cornice.
And we could not add, together with this, to possibly redimension the building next to the bank. I mean, all those things you have listed, I don't understand why we want to have still the scale. Is the scale better? That's what I
It's
want.
not better, Sante, but the scale is what we're going to get.
I
And so-
second Trina's motion. If I'm able to, as a non-board member, I second.
Yes, you may. Yes, you
I
can.
second Trina's motion.
Okay, so the motion has been seconded, so we need to vote on the motion.
Are you going to call the roll down?
I can do that.
I don't
All
have
right. Okay, so Teague, yes. Viera,
Yes.
Makiva.
Yes.
Oh, is somebody keeping track of this?
I am.
Okay, okay. Chesler,
Yes.
Drinkwater, Indig, Kaminsky,
Yes.
Canton,
Yes.
Kelterborn,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Michelli,
No.
Rabbi Niederman,
Yes.
Nieves, Sofer,
Yes.
Vega,
Yes.
Weiser. I thought you were here, no? Okay. Andrews, Berger, Kawachka,
Yes.
Naplatarski,
Yes.
Stone.
I just, did Karen vote or did she not vote? I didn't, Nieves? Is she still hearing?
I think
no
she,
longer here.
She's
no
longer in the meeting.
I think she left.
And Myers, what's your vote, yes or no? I'm sorry.
My vote was yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So you have the count, Trina, clearly it passed.
Yeah, it passed, and the count is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 yes and 1 no.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. This was really, I think, a really, really good conversation.
And thank you, Ralph, for bringing your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Ralph. And please feel free to bring people to the full board meeting. All right.
Can I just add one thing that I did, what I mentioned when I was brought up the resolution is that we'll preface it by a sort of a synopsis of our discussion, because I think it's important for Landmarks to have heard about how we deliberated.
I agree.
Okay.
So our chair asked me to bring this up at the committee, and it has to do with the after hours variances that more and more of the developers are asking for. There really was quite a divide when in answer to the Broadway Triangle's request. However, even though a number of people on the community board felt we should make an exception for them, it was voted down. Now, let me just say that some time ago, the community board voted very strongly to err on the side of quality of life of residents. And so we voted to not support the request for after-hour working variances on the weekends, early in the morning, in the evening. And so our standard of dealing with these requests has been to just give that letter to the city whenever the developers ask for the variances. Let me just say that apparently, recently, the city has decided to defer to our policy and has been denying the variances based on our policy to deny the variances. So I guess a rather odd, we're in a rather interesting situation. Do we now say, oh my goodness, we didn't think the city would actually back us up. We didn't think the city would honor our policy. What do you know? And then do we start backing off on it, or do we stand firm and say this is our policy? And if the city finds some emergency health reason to go against our policy, fine. I'm not sure what that would be. I can imagine, a gas leak or something like that, and it's just such an emergency or a health emergency or something where I know we would understand if the city then turned around and said, oh, well, this is an exception. However, we have two requests for additional, hours of work. One from Alley Construction Corporation, and I think you've all seen this. I think that this was spread around, and one from Williamsburg Houses Historic Rehab. As I understand it, we're going to get a lot more. I think that as we all know, there's massive development going on all over the district, and from what I understand, we're going to get a lot more developers coming, pretty ticked off that the city has decided to honor our policy, and we're going to get a lot more developers coming and just being upset, annoyed, angry, whatever, confused at the fact that the city has been honoring our policy. I think it's I've made it pretty clear, I think, what my view is, and my view is only worth one vote, no more, no less than anyone else. I was a part of the original vote to err on the side of backing up and being concerned about the quality of life of the residents. I can tell you that when this was brought up and the residents begged us to please not to support the additional hours. They begged us to give them peace of mind and peace and quiet on the weekends and early in the morning when they're trying to get to work and not have to deal with all of the extra traffic that the work causes or whatever in the evenings, to give them some quiet. So that was how we did it. That was some years ago. I don't know that the tenor of the board or the impressions of the current board are the same. That's my feeling, my position. I don't think it would be fair tonight to try to have a vote on this because it's not on the agenda, and so the community has not been is not on notice at all that this is even something that is being looked at. But I don't think it would hurt for people to have a discussion. We can't have a very long discussion, but our chair did ask me to bring it up under new, under, new, topics. So here we are. Okay, I see William Vega.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I just want to say, the city actually gave us the final say, not like with landmarks and etc. We should take it. Whoever the developers are, they should give us facts why they need to do this. I think we should, we got this win and we should hang on to it dearly. Thank you.
Okay, Adam Myers. I'm just going across the row here that I see. Adam Myers.
And this is more a question than a comment, but I just want to better understand it. What I'm hearing is that the city's policy now is that developers who seek variances in Community District 1 are being denied them across the board, even where we haven't commented specifically on their application. It's sort of a recognition of a new district-wide policy, and these variances are only going to be granted where we make an explicit exception for them?
I can't answer that. I just can't. It seems to me that we have a policy. The policy is that we, in general, ask the city that we are not supporting giving developers after hours variances. And it appears to me that the city has denied some of the requests. I certainly have no idea what the change, if there's a change of policy with the city. I have no idea. We have not spoken to the city. I can only tell you that it looks to me like they're deferring, at least to some extent, to the policy that we voted on. The community board did vote on this to have a blanket lack of support for the after hours variances. And I can't tell you what the city is. I only know that it seems that the city has deferred to us in a few instances, and that's all I can tell you.
And given that we're not going to be voting on this tonight, I wonder if there's time for some outreach to the city to figure out exactly what the new dynamic is. That might be helpful in guiding our own policy here.
Sure. We can even ask if the city could come and speak to the board, to the full board, or to us. I'm putting this down. All right, now who else has their hands up? Corey, I see you.
Yeah.
And then Steve, you're next.
I think I pretty much agree with William on this, in the sense that, our neighborhood has so much construction and is going to continue having so much construction. So while I wasn't on the board at the time that it was decided that we wouldn't grant after hours requests, I was part of the Broadway Triangle conversation, and my impression at that time was that, this was a policy, and to set a new precedent would basically give us a barrage of these types of requests. And I think, if we weren't going to approve Broadway Triangle, then I think it has to your point, have some real reason why we shouldn't. Honestly, we have long meetings as it is with, quite frankly, a lot of developers. And I think that I would rather not have to deal with this question over and over again with a specific site unless it has some extraneous circumstances. So, I appreciate Adam's wanting to understand more of the history of this, but, I think generally speaking, as someone who, has lived through a lot of construction and knows a lot coming on in the next few years, I think that there was a reason for that choice, and it's a lot easier for us if the city answers for us.
I mean, in terms of the history, I think I've done the best I can to tell you that our residents came to us with very strong requests to not support these requests for after hour variances.
Yeah, I guess in that sense, in terms of Adam's question about how the city is, I guess, responding on our behalf, if that's the case. I mean, you know, I personally am kind of happy with that. If that's what the committee believes, then for us not to be burdened with the same question, you know, again and again, it seems to make sense to me, unless there's, you know, a specific reason.
Steve, you had your hand up. Steve Chesler. I can't hear you, Steve. I think you're muted.
Right, sorry about that. Yeah, you know, I'm still, I guess I'm still a little bit shaken up by the Broadway Triangle request. Just, you know, I've been on the board for 5 years. I didn't know there was a policy blanket rejecting all, you know, after hours construction permits. So I just wonder, is it really viable to have a 10-year-old policy that just has an automatic reaction versus renewing that every year? And as Corey mentioned, you know, unless they're extenuating circumstances, well, how do we decide what extenuating circumstances are unless we're like aware of the applications that come in? I feel like somehow the board should be doing due diligence, at least being aware of these, the members should know about these applications, know about the volume, just so we can, you know, just so we can be informed and not just, you know, because I feel like the Broadway Triangle, I mean, it was just so historic, 100% affordable housing, and we're applying this, you know, blanket policy towards that. But I feel like, you know, maybe there are other, you know, unique circumstances like that that we need to really make, you know, have a methodical reaction to. But I think, again, for considering new board members, you know, turnover, and I think just, I'd be right, I think at the very least renew that every year, and or in some regular but shorter time span, and be made aware of these requests. And I know that there hasn't been a district manager report or chairperson's report in like over 2 years, but we need to have those so we see that correspondence going in and out, you know, so it's not a shock to us and have to dig through 100 pages of, you know, minutes to find something.
Okay, Trina?
I just want to point out that one of the people making the request is Williamsburg Houses, which a project we know well on the Landmarks Committee. And that, I mean, that's the work being done. There are people living in those buildings while the work is being done. And I think that unless the people in the building are really calling for it, there's no reason for us to go out of our way to give a variance.
I would agree with that, but I think this is something we can discuss. I think it could be brought up at the full board meeting, and we can put it on the agenda for our next committee meeting, which is, again, because it's not the first Monday of the month, November 30th. I think we might want to be cautious about giving up the, we might want to be cautious about giving up that policy without a lot of thought, because it was made in response to the community. Now, do we want, we can discuss how to go forward with this. We can certainly put it on the agenda for the next committee meeting, but I did think it would be helpful to have us have at least touch bases on it, have started discussion on it.
Also, isn't it other committees too? Is it necessarily a land use committee? It's more of a...
I don't, that's a good question. I don't even know if it really is a land use committee item, but again, maybe we can raise that question at the full board, you know?
Also quality of life, and it's a community issue when,
Yeah.
you know, And I believe that's what you were pointing, if I can speak,
Yeah.
Dale.
Yeah.
And, you know, something I learned, for example, that the compliance office, a landmark, is so overwhelmed, and so it is DOB, right? Because the amount of construction and the amount of violation, you know, they have difficulty to following up compliance. And one thing is generally, you know, what happened, why this measure, and I agree with William Vega, you know, we should take on once some few resolutions that we make are finally recognized, they are very important. And also weekend, so we know it's very difficult. There's a lot of violation that cannot be enforced during the weekend. You know, you call 311, you go there to Monday to Tuesday. So it's very, very difficult. You know, things that, you know, so what sometimes happen with these over the weekend extra hours work. You don't have an enforcement in place that can cover only certain sector of major emergency and safety and hazard category. But a lot of them, as you said, on quality of life, completely uncovered. So I believe it's very important. You know, we shouldn't even question. And it's something regard that maybe my committee too. It's a community issue. It's a public safety, and the conversation needs to happen more about quality of life. We have to step outside of agenda, political agenda, which are lessened. I'm not saying they shouldn't exist, but I believe we have to step up doing what we were supposed to do. Quality of life in any form. Thank you.
Chair, can I say something quickly?
Yes.
William, sorry, I'll make this quick. Yes, the letter was sent, as Trina said, for Williamsburg houses. It's in empty stairwells from Saturdays from 9 to 4. Empty stairwells wiring for Wi-Fi. I could go back to it, and some asbestos abatement. I mean, this seems to me like this could be something which would be beneficial and not much of a hardship to people in the housing there. Maybe that's not true. I can't speak for them. So it's just to say, yes, I think it's a great idea, Del, to have it on the agenda next meeting. I don't think that we should say categorically that we should just dismiss all, because there may be some points where it actually would be to the advantage to have, you know, after hours.
So let me just say to that, if we start looking at everyone and, well, this one, certain people like this one, it looks good. Certain people like that one. My concern is the community has come to us over and over again and begged us, don't support these variances. Now, we are not the community board. Remember, it's just advisory. The city can override us if in any situation where they think that it's a special situation. The only thing that's happening that I see now, and again, this is speculation, I haven't spoken to anyone in the city, but my sense is they are at least deferring to us. They are at least giving some credence to the fact that we have said to them, we don't support it. We didn't say we reject it. The vote was that we do, and the letter is that we don't support in general, these after-hour variances. The city has, in a number of these situations now, taken that into consideration and has denied the request. So it's not that we have control, but it does appear that the city is acknowledging that we have this policy. I can only tell you, after all the years I've been on this community board, how frustrating it has been for the board to have the city just, you know, turn its back on us, not really, not take many of our requests seriously. That doesn't mean they don't take anything seriously, but it happens, I think, more than we've liked, more than we've wanted. And I don't know, do we want to now turn around and say, oh, we didn't know you were really going to pay any attention to us. You know, we have to rethink that. I don't know. I hear you. Some of you think it should be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And where does that leave us? Where does that, we're now going to, so some of us might think this one is okay. Some others might have some kind of an investment in that development and think that development really needs to get done faster. And I'm just concerned about the overall needs of the residents and the quality of life. And I just feel that personally, my time at the community board I've felt that too often we don't really take enough of a strong stand on people's quality of life and you know, residents come to us and they think, well, we're just individuals, you know, the developers are going to get everything they want. We finally took a stand on this. We didn't say you must deny everything. It was simply, in general, we were not in support of it. That's my feeling. I hear some of you are saying, you know, you think maybe we should look at the individual cases, but let me just remind you, the city can do that. We are only advisory. City does not have to, just the mere fact that they are now actually paying some homage to our policy doesn't in any way stop them from looking at a project and saying, you know, this one we're gonna allow, which they've done in the past. So, William, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Oh, yes. Again, the city's acknowledged because we represent the community to be the filter. So on one thing, I apologize if I didn't read the email. I'd like to see the copy of that letter, that resolution. And number two, I think we have to develop in this committee a critique for us to consider extending those hours. Thank you.
Okay. Maria, did you want to say something? You're muted.
I do, but there were hands raised before mine.
I only
Adam
see
Myers' hand is
Adam Myers, and Adam, I think you spoke already, but
Paul.
I did
Paul's
speak.
hand.
I just raised my hand, but I think I'm in the back of the line now.
okay. And Paul, I don't see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might be in the front of the line.
Okay, Paul, I see you. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this does seem like kind of a tough one. I was just looking at the request that came through today for 676 Leonard, which is just, you know, it sounds like quiet interior work. So kind of a question, like, in the past, has there been any kind of differentiation made between, you know, exterior versus more interior stuff? Maybe to William's point, there does need to be some kind of, you know, checklist criteria. I mean, I don't, it gets complicated really quickly. I can see the challenge with this. But it does seem like we should try to, you know, if it's a project like what 676 sounds like, it's at the finish line and they just need a couple days of quiet work to get it done, you know, you want to try to be helpful, I feel like, in those situations. I'm not sure what the answer is.
Trina and I talked about this, and one of the things we thought about was if really it is just interior work that would not affect residents outside of the building, then perhaps they could come with a petition from the residents. They can show that the residents are actually in support of this. That would be an easy one, because if it's really just interior, and it's usually not that, and I've never seen it where it's just a couple of days. We're talking about, often they're talking about, you know, for the next couple of years or whatever, or however long the extension goes. But certainly I would think that if it's just interior work and the only effect it would have would be on residents, I think that's a rather unusual situation, and I don't see why they couldn't have get support of the residents. In which case, the question of quality of life is kind of taken care of, you know. Maria, are you next? I'm sorry, I'm seeing Maria and Isaac Sofer.
I think I'm next.
Okay.
So that I'm piggybacking on what was just said by Paul and even William, where perhaps there shouldn't be a blanket denial for these requests, because they're not all the same. There's a really big distinction with this last request for the NYCHA development, where it's wiring for Wi-Fi access, and I don't know if anyone really looked at the community and the district needs of how Bushwick and some parts of Williamsburg have the highest incidences of no Wi-Fi access. And we're talking about those particular hubs where there is, folks are the most impoverished. So to deny this, to me, it's just, I think it just shouldn't be, especially when it's not a major impact of the quality of life of those residents. It's a Saturday work where it's happening in a stairwell that is not utilized. So here is where this blanket decision this blanket denial has to be reconsidered.
Well, again, I think it would be not such a hard thing to understand that this is not your typical request. Just, I mean, how often, I don't know if I've ever seen one where it's just quiet interior work. That's not usually the problem. And I don't know that they'd have a problem getting a good number of their residents, or they have a tenant committee, as far as I know, to get support of that. So I don't know if that's really even so much of an issue. But do we really want to start getting involved with every single application that comes along and sitting around and deciding, well, this one looks like maybe we should allow, maybe we shouldn't, if it's really just, again, it's exterior work, it's noisy, and it's, just one of the many requests that essentially a good number of the developers have. I don't know. Isaac Sofer, you had something?
Yes, hi. I basically agree with Mr. Vega. I think that's a very reasonable approach. I want just to add that the Project Triangle, I was one of those who opposed, but I offered a resolution that if it has support from the surrounding neighbors, I would consider it. In other words, I'm concerned that we should hold on to that power. We need to be reasonable. In other words, the city should see and say to developers, Community Board 1 is reasonable, go to them. Because if you're going to be blanket, I think we're going to lose it soon at the same. Because most community boards doesn't have blanket policies. A lot of them have blanket policies to grant. So we cannot stand out, and the city should say, okay, Community Board 1 is not the typical rationale to understand development, and we'll take it away. I think we should have, the policy should be not, but we should have some measure or score, whatever, when it's still, we should allow it to go.
So I'm thinking maybe we discuss this more, and also I'm just really not sure that this is really just a land use responsibility. I just am concerned about us assuming the responsibility and finding out that it really doesn't just rest with this committee, but we certainly can get started. And what I'm hearing is that maybe we should, what I'm thinking from what I'm hearing is, before we bring the city down, maybe we all talk some more, put it on the agenda for next month, bring it up at the full board meeting, and see about having an internal conversation before we bring the city down. I don't know what you all think of that, but I think that makes some sense, Michael Kowachka.
Yeah, the Williamsburg houses one, I think that's a no-brainer. That should be approved. There are a lot of people being inconvenienced for all the reasons that Maria said, and there are people being displaced temporarily. And I think if they work on the weekends, that project will be sped up. So that is my 2 cents about that project.
I would still like to see some support from the residents. I would think it wouldn't be too difficult, but that's my feeling. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Maybe the board can reach out to the tenant committee and ask them.
Yeah, there is a tenant committee there that, at least as far as I know, there is. And I don't know why they can't just get a letter of support.
Couldn't that be done maybe before the full board meeting, maybe?
I can ask Joanna. Joanna, is it possible to ask that developer for a letter of support from the tenant committee?
Sure.
Then if it was done before the full board meeting, then it could be voted on by full board. So they wouldn't have to wait till the end of November.
Sure.
Okay.
Is that okay with everybody? Anybody against that? I don't hear anybody against it. Okay, great.
That seems like a good rule of thumb in a way. In a building where work's being done, that the tenant committee or a majority of tenants can.
Yeah, well, I think that's where that distinction,
Yes.
if it's interior work in an existing building and who, what type of building it is, et cetera, versus, the mega towers on the East River and Greenpoint.
Right. I mean, this is the first one I've seen like this. That doesn't mean it hasn't been done. I'm just saying, I don't think it's the typical situation. Maria, yes.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. All right, so we'll do that, and thank you, everybody.
Buenas noches.
Good
night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.